Good morning, everybody. I'm ready to talk about the Lord today. We all need to be willing to do that. That's kind of our Christian job. We're to be witnesses, and witnesses can be somebody that tells about what they know. If you've read the Bible, you're a witness to the Bible. None of us are going to say that we've seen Christ, not properly. We all dream, and we can dream that we've walked in the garden with Christ, but our mind is capable of creating images like that. You're seeing what some of these AI programs can do. They can put you in the midst of stuff, or our brain can do the same thing. So just because you dream something doesn't mean that it really happened. And it doesn't mean that it's from God either, unfortunately. All right. How close are we to World War III? How close are we to a biblical battle? We're going to look at that. We've got our best world bombers in Diego Garcia. It's an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's surrounded by water. You can't sneak up on it. Iran has threatened to take out our planes there. They haven't got any way to do that. They can threaten and threaten. Russia might be able to get something in there like cruise missiles coming across the water, but don't you think we know that that's a possibility? And they have defenses against that. And you say, well, why out in the middle of the ocean like that? They have a direct shot to the Middle East. They don't have to fly over any country to get to Iran. They just go right up the water, and they can be there. We have aircraft carriers. I believe there's 3 in there now in the Middle East. Are we getting ready to attack Iran? I don't think so. But Russia just stepped in and said that if the United States attacks Iran's nuclear power, that it will be catastrophic for the United States. So they've threatened the United States to go to war if we help Israel, our ally, attack their greatest enemy. So Russia is part of that. Are we surprised? Not if we know Ezekiel 38. Now, how close are we to that? You know, Turkey is in that group in Ezekiel 38. A couple of times their names are mentioned for different areas in Turkey, because Turkey's big. Turkey has the 7 churches. It didn't used to be anti-Israel. Turkey and Lebanon used to be tourist areas that the Israelis used to go to. Right now, Israel has no tourist areas. They've been completely surrounded by the enemy. Some more dangerous than others. And they've tried to set up peaceful areas for people, land for peace, and it doesn't work. I hope our government realizes that they would never, ever propose that again, because it doesn't work. Not when you're dealing with somebody whose primary goal in life is to remove Israel from the planet. That is so satanic that you're not going to negotiate. You can't negotiate with the devil. It's like, well, I'll do a little bit for you and you do this for me. You can't negotiate with the devil. And I think we figured that out. All right. So let's take a look at our lesson for today. And we're going to, first off, we're going to read Ezekiel 38 to see where we're at. And then I'll cover where these locations are. This is prophetic. The United States is never going to be able to, nor any other country, including Israel, wipe Iran off the face of the earth, because they're in the Bible. Israel was talked about in the end times. People didn't believe it, but they're there now. Well, Iran is going to be there But they're going to be in a diminished state, at least according to the biblical account, because Russia will be the leader of the Ezekiel 38 war, not Iran. Iran would prefer to be. Turkey would prefer to be, but they're not the leader. So Ezekiel 38:1, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Well, we've covered this before, but Gog is the leader mentioned here. Magog is the area that's essentially where Russia is now. It's very north. The people that are in that area have always been militaristic. Part of that area has been bad for so long. The Great Wall of China was not built to keep the Chinese in, but to keep the people of this land from coming into China. They built that monstrous wall because that's how bad these people were. They kept coming into the country and raiding and going back, and they couldn't stop them, so they built a wall. 38:3. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws and bring you with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde of large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Remember what I said in the past. The imagery that we have in the Bible is based on what they knew back then. A chariot was the modern transportation. Today we have tanks. They didn't have any flying machines. Today we have plenty of flying machines. So their imagery is based on what they could associate with. Now here's these names. 38:5. Persia. I'm going to go over these at the end, but Persia is what Iran used to be called, but Persia is kind of a pseudo-Greek name, and they didn't like it, so they changed their name to Iran, I don't know, 80 years ago, something like that. So Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, with their shields and helmets. Also Gomar with all of its troops. Beth Togarmah from the far north and all of its troops. To many nations with you. Get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. So God is going to put hooks in his mouth. What could possibly lure somebody to go to war? Well, Israel has a very large natural gas finding that they have out in the Gulf and partially under their country. They can become the leader of the energy in Europe, and Russia currently has that and wants to keep that and maintain that. Everybody's talking provocatively. The question is, who's going to be the first to flinch? 38:8. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that was rediscovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which have long been desolate. They have been brought out of the nations, and now all of them live in safety. Most live in safety, I suppose. The Bible says all. I guess compared to what they could live in, they're all living in safety, at least for a moment. What Hamas did when they came across out of Gaza was atrocious, but prior to that, Israel was living in safety and believed this, because this is Old Testament. And like the rest of the world, thought that if we give them everything they want, they won't hate us. No, this is Satan. Satan's hate will never diminish. It may go underground, but it won't diminish. Verse 9, you and your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. That's a lot of people. 10, and this is what the sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. Well, they won't devise it. They'll just receive it, basically, because it's Satan's scheme. You will say, I will invade the land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. I will plunder and loot the land and turn my hand against the resettled ruins of the people gathered from the nations. Israel was gathered back. Israel didn't exist before 1948, 47. The Holocaust, as bad as it was, convinced the world to give Israel their country back. Give them a place where they can be safe. That's the only reason that they exist. Russia actually voted for the state of Israel because a lot of the Jews that were going to be immigrating there were from Russia. The Jews went north when they were conquered in 70 AD. They went to many other areas, but they went north for the most part. And when they came back and wanted a homeland, Russia was for them because they lived in kibbutzes. A kibbutz is basically a small, I don't want to call it tent community, but nomad type community. They're not permanent, not by any means, because sometimes they have to move. They were very socialistic in these kibbutzes because they had to be. And socialism does work in very small groups. You get it too large and it doesn't work. But in very small groups it does work. That's why these ideologues that think that socialism is great, they've only seen it work in small areas. Maybe in their little community, in their little job that they're at. They've seen it work. A benevolent dictator is the truest form of government. But I can only think of one human being, half human, that's been on the earth that I'd want to have as a dictator. And believe me, he's coming back and he will be a dictator. It is the best form of government. You're not dealing with red tape. Gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and goods, living at the center of the land. 13. Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish and all their villages will say to you, have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hoard to loot, to carry off silver and gold, and to take away livestock and goods, and to seize much plunder? Russia doesn't want their silver and gold and livestock, but that was what they thought was of value. They had no idea about natural gas, gasoline, diesel, because those were for vehicles that they knew nothing about. All they knew was that kings had silver and gold and livestock. So again, this is their writing of the day. Therefore, Son of Man, prophesy to that 14. Prophesy to say to Gog, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In that day, when my people of Israel are living in safety, you will not take notice of it. You will come from a place in the far north, Russia, you and many nations with you, all of them riding on horses, a great horde, a mighty army. Now, they're already very close. If we can get the Ukrainian war to end, they have a pathway now because they took the eastern part of Ukraine. And that gives them a pathway down south. They've already got bases there that they can establish. And actually they can continue to move back. They used to have bases in Syria. They abandoned them during the Ukraine war because they needed the resources. They can set them up again. You will advance against my people like a cloud that covers the land. This must be important because it keeps stating the obvious and same thing. Gog, I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. This is what the sovereign Lord says. You are the one I spoke of in former days by my servants and prophets of Israel. And at that time they prophesied for years that I would bring judgment against them. This is what will happen on that day. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused. A loving God, angry. I don't want to see that. We all know some people that if you get them mad, they get red-faced and angry, and we don't want to see that. I don't want to see this. I don't think we're here for that, but we might see, well, obviously, wars and rumors of wars we're told about. I don't know if we're going to see this before we get out of here. I personally think that the rapture is first, because there's a lot of things holding by the fact that the United States is a deterrent. We were founded as a holy nation. We've drifted from that. There's some hope that we're coming back to that now. But the United States has been a deterrent. We're moving all of our military that we can up into the area. That's for deterrence. It would not be to our benefit to attack Iran. Israel should attack Iran, and they have the capability. We're already doing major damage to Iran. They're suffering big time, economically. They don't have enough power. They're like the number third or fourth producer of oil in the world, and they don't have enough fuel because they use all their time and money and effort to destroy Israel. Their people don't matter. There's a coup going to happen if they don't stop this. The majority of the people of Iran don't want the current government. And the current government, the Ayatollahs, they took power. They were not elected. And if they're not careful, the people are going to take the power back. So we got to be careful in attacking Iran that we don't hurt the people more than they're already being hurt. But at some point in time, you have to go in with whatever power you need to take out the government, take out the leadership. 19. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at that time, there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. There have been great earthquakes in Israel many times. They're in a geologically active area. The current Dome of the Rock has been destroyed a number of times and rebuilt. That fancy gold dome was recent, paid for by Saudi Arabia. But it was just a monument, a tourist trap, if you will, to come see where the Jewish temple used to be. And they made money on it, back when money was more important than destroying Israel. Verse 20, the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and the beasts in the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people on the ground, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. Let's get that again. The fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the beasts of the field, all animal life, every creature that moves along the ground, reptiles. Those are mentioned first because they are everywhere. And all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. The mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on my mountains, declares the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. They will begin fighting each other. I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him, and on the troops, and on the many nations with him. And so I will show my greatness, my holiness. I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. What better wake-up call for the rest of the world to leave Israel alone, and for Israel to realize that God is there for them? What better way to run into the tribulation with that information? So that's why I think it's early. There are multiple accounts. Some people say, well, that's because there's multiple Ezekiel wars. That's possible. There could be one at the end. We know that there's going to be another big war, Armageddon, at the end. That could be interpreted as a Ezekiel-type war. So here's a detailed breakdown of the names. Gog is identified as the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, where Magog is the land. Those are cities that are up in that area, were up in that area. We know where they were, so we know the area. Again, whether it's the technology, chariots of fire, or the locations, these were all from the day. People knew these back when, and you got to look at when this was written. Persia. Ezekiel identifies Persia as one of the nations involved in the attack, which is interpreted as modern-day Iran. I've already covered that. Ethiopia. The next mentions Ethiopia as another nation in the coalition, which is often interpreted as the modern-day Sudan. Get your map out and look at the globe. Look at what the world looks like. Put. Funny name, but we know today is Libya. We put them back in the Dark Ages a long time ago. They've been silent. But they haven't changed their stripes. They will ally with this coalition. Gomer. That's identified as a nation with troops involved in the invasion. Some interpretations suggest it's part of the modern Turkey. Beth Togarmah, from the remote parts of the north, which are also its troops. This is also part of modern Turkey. Turkey is a pretty large area, and it goes all the way over to the 7 churches and the island of Patmos. It would be nice to be able to visit some of these sites, but Turkey today is not a friendly to the west or to Israel. Meshech and Tubal. These are basically the Caucasus region, if you get your map out. Northern Turkey and the Caucasus up in that area. So it goes from there all the way up to Magog. And Rosh is just a part of the land of Gog, which is their leader. So these areas are basically, Russia's dictatorial, Turkey's dictatorial, Libya, Persia. All these places are being run by a small dictatorial group. One individual or a small group of individuals. There's no democracy there. The people have no say. The leaders want to feel like they're rulers of the world. Turkey is flexing its muscle. It's trying to set up a base in Syria. daring Israel to attack them. Israel should attack them because they have no business there. Their only purpose there is to take over the world. Israel is quite capable of punishing Iran, and probably the only one who can justify it, because Iran launched those 400 missiles, of which half of them didn't make it to Israel, but the other half of them didn't make it to where they were going to be a threat, and the other half were shot down. Their technology is not very good. But if Russia decides to get involved with Ezekiel 38, they could. Now, I still think the United States is going to keep this from happening. But if you have the rapture, and it's soon, if you have the rapture, and you take Christians off the face of the earth, there'll be no opposition. And it will embolden Russia and the rest of the countries to come in and attack. Israel will still exist. It will exist till the end. But there's no mention of the United States. There's no mention of England or other areas. I know you can stretch the truth and stretch the words and say, well, this word meant this. Well, fine. You can believe that, but until you can prove it, it's still conjecture. Some people think, well, there's a possibility the United States exists. Well, we do exist at a time of Israel. We're the only big country in the world that recognizes Israel. Russia doesn't. China doesn't. Certainly all the Muslim countries don't. And they're pretty dominant around the area. And they're basically, the Muslims are doing a reverse of Napoleon. Napoleon started in the West and went to the East, and the Muslims are starting in the East and moving back to the West. Learn from your counterpart. You get too big, you can't manage that much area. And it was their downfall. Individuals can't play God, although they try. Okay, one last thing, turning to our troubles that we're having here in the United States. They're not going to win out. The left is not going to win out. They've got, I heard that 660 lower court judges in the different states who have districts that they're responsible for. They are not, capital N-O-T, federal judges. They have no jurisdiction. What they're getting away with right now, our current administration is allowing, waiting for the Supreme Court and or Congress to step in. You're not going to impeach these judges. One, there's too many. Now, out of that 660, there's not that many that are leftists. There's maybe a couple hundred. But there's 160 some odd lawsuits now against Schumer, and a bunch of his fellow Democrats sued the White House, the president, for not allowing illegals to vote. Another frivolous lawsuit. It's in our Constitution that they can't. But Congress and our Supreme Court has to finally start doing something. You can't sit there and spend 5 years looking at a case when you got 160 of them. You've got to basically do a blanket ruling that this is already covered in our legal documents. This is illegal. Any judge who does this from now on will be disbarred and not allowed to practice in the United States ever again. Period. If you don't start toughening up, Satan is tough, and he doesn't mind sacrificing pawns in this chess game. He doesn't mind sacrificing anybody in this chess game except for himself. Our Republicans, who typically don't fight dirty, that's fine, But they do need to toughen up their normal fighting. The Democrats will get in goose step and all get behind one issue and defeat their opponent. The Republicans can't argue until they can argue until they're so divided that they can't do anything, and that's exactly what Satan tries to do, get them divided. We probably, and I'm saying probably because I can't prove it, probably have a rapture coming very soon. We're holding things up. We're the restraining force. It's Christians, and the United States being a Christian nation, so to speak, obviously not as big and powerful as a Christian nation as we used to be, but they haven't gotten rid of us. A lot of Christians have been misled, have made wrong interpretations, have been tempted by the world, have been persuaded by the woke crowd. They can come back. They're still Christians anyway, and they can come back to the fold. The prodigal son is always welcome. The biggest corporation in the world, Disney, just lost, $100 million, something like that, on this last movie they produced. But they're a $40 or $50 billion a year company. They can absorb that, not indefinitely, but they can absorb that. Their stockholders won't be happy. And a corporation is really a proper form of dictatorship, because the people still have a say. All right. Be ready. It could be this springtime. It could be over the next few weeks with the holidays coming up. We got people predicting all kinds of things coming up in April. Just be ready. We don't know. We don't know the day or the hour. That's the second coming, but we know even less about the rapture. It's imminent, and that's all you have to do. Be ready. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.